This is Akashvani. In the weekly program Current Affairs, now we bring you a discussion on President's visit to Algeria, Mauritania and Malawi. The participants are Shilkant Sharma, former ambassador, Sameer Bhattacharya, political scientist, and Mayusha, Akashvani correspondent. Moderator is Diksha Saxena, Akashvani correspondent. President Draupadi Murmu was on a three-nation tour to Africa. President's visit, which began on 13th of this month, will conclude tomorrow. She visited Algeria, Mauritania, and is currently in Malawi. President is the first Indian president to visit these three countries. To discuss more on this, I am joined by Ambassador Shilkant Sharma, Mr. Sameer Bhattacharya, strategic analyst, and Akashvani correspondent Mayusha, who has been on ground and covering the visit. Welcome to the show. First of all, Ambassador Sharma and Mr. Bhattacharya, I would like to ask you both very briefly, how do you view this visit by the head of the state to these African nations? Is this a reflection of India's growing partnership with Africa, and also since Africa was made a permanent member of the G20 last year under India's presidency?
This is really very significant because it's the first time that our president has visited these countries. One of them, Algeria, is very special in the sense that it's an Arab country, it's an African country, and it's also a Francophone country. And with Algeria, we've had a very long relationship. It started right from its independence in 1962. And even before that, the Front Liberation National, the FLN party, had an office in India in the 50s. So, and then we've had exchange of visits with Algeria at all levels. For the first time, we have a president of India visiting Algeria, which has a certain significance and all-embracing because the relationship is really multifarious, and President touched upon these things in our statements. And then we came to the other country, which is Malawi, which has a large Indian community where we have relationship which is recently activated. And we have a third country, which is Mauritania, which is again African, but which is a member of the Arab League, Arabic as a language, and it's an Islamic country. So in one visit, India has covered at the highest level three important dimensions of its relationship with Africa. The dimensions are Africa is the Sahel, which is the North Africa, which is Arab countries, Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Morocco. And these are all important countries. Algeria being a long-standing member of the non-aligned and having been India's friend, our prime ministers have visited there and their prime ministers have visited us. So this is renewing at a very high level the relationship, where potential needs to be still developed because we have a large potential, but the relationship stays at 2 billion plus trade turnover. Then the visit to Mauritania was an opening at Nouakchott, which is again showing India's great interest in Africa. And Malawi, it has a large Indian diaspora, and we've had connections going back to the 19th century. And Malawi is resource rich, and India is already the fourth largest investor there, where our trade is also growing. So the President said in her statement that this shows India's interest not only at the government level, but at the private sector level also. Because India's whole policy about Africa, which has been borne out by the India-Africa summits in the past decade, there the interest of these private companies has really increased significantly, and investments have increased. And the interest in natural resources, which are now everyone's need, and Malawi, Mauritania, they have large resources. And Algeria, we already know, we've been prospecting things there. Algeria's oil and gas have been on our list, but other minerals also. And we have been dealing with them at the technology level. So in African nations, the state visit at the level of president has been fewer in the past. I am very happy that our government has taken up this matter and President visited there, accompanied by the Minister of External Affairs and MPs. So it's a symbolic visit which gives a great significance of India's interest. It is substantial because the President's speech, she touched upon ground realities and what we can do. And then it's a reinforcement of whatever we've been doing so far, in the sense that the Joint Commission in Algeria, in the case of Algeria, which has had 10 sessions, that has been reinforced. And in the case of Malawi and Mauritania, the existing exchanges, like we've been using ITEC, the International Technical Exchange and Cooperation Program, under which we are giving scholarships and training. So that has been again given an accent. Then we have also pointed the role of the diaspora, how the Indian diaspora can take things forward in a major dimension. So there is substance, there is symbolic significance, and there is a bilateral reinforcement of relationship. So in these three matters, the visit is, I think, I would say, is a successful visit. It increases India's footprint on Africa, already quite big, because India's relationship with Africa has been since our independence, and we have been there. But now these countries, some of them are younger in the context of decolonization and independence, like Malawi and Mauritania. But we have had relationship with them. So in that sense, and then they participated. Mauritanian vice president was in India for the summit. Algeria and Malawi also participated. So we have in a major way reinforced our relationship with these three countries, and through them, the African Union, because last year at the G20 summit in India, the African Union was admitted to India's initiative and India's behest.
Right. I would now like to bring in Mr. Bhattacharya, and I would like him to express his views on the subject, like how does he view this visit of President to these African nations. Mr. Bhattacharya, if you could just express your views briefly.
Thank you, Diksha. So I would agree with what you said and what Ambassador earlier said. See, Africa has always been a foreign policy priority for India. And in the last 10 years of Modi government, there were more than 35 visits from the level of President, Vice President, Prime Minister. But since this visit is most important because it is the first state level visit since African Union joined the G20. And also this is the first visit from Modi government's team in the third term. Now, why these three countries? While Ambassador has explained a little bit on our historic connection and also present interest, I would also say some strategic issues. So, for example, Algeria had its presidential election just this September 7th. So, in any case, there was a need for a courtesy visit to meet the new president. So, in that way, it was very important. Then Algeria is since the Sudan got divided. Algeria is in superficie, it is the number one country in Africa. It borders, as the ambassador said, it has a extreme influence of Arab countries and European countries. And also Algeria is very rich in petrol, oil and gas. So in that way, it is very important for India but despite our, economic engagement, it is not really up to the potential. And also one thing in the Maghreb geopolitics, you have to understand that Morocco and Algeria, these are the two countries, they always oppose each other. Morocco, which has previously became quite pro-West. It has tried to, make relationship with Israel better. Algeria has always been pro-Palestine. In fact, it has supported South Africa in ICJ against Israel. It is also asking UNSC to call for ceasefire in Rafah and Gaza. So in that way, visiting Algeria is also India's strategic balance towards Palestine, whatever is going on there. Next comes Mauritania. I think the most important country that among these three is Mauritania. Why? Number one, Mauritania is currently it is holding the presidency of African Union. So you know that India-Africa Forum Summit, India's institutional mechanism, last time it took place, it was in 2015. So 9 years have passed by and there is a strong rumor that India is going to organize it either towards the end of this year or early next year. And in that case, India needs the support of African Union head. So Mauritania, in that way, it's very important. Plus, it is also country which borders, again, it's a neighboring country of Algeria. It borders both Europe and Africa. And towards the south of Mauritania is, in fact, it's a Sahel country. So if you are aware, the Sahel countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, all these countries, the coup and other political instability, there are many refugee issues. Is a very big thing. Many refugees, they are escaping their country and then they're trying to flee to Europe via Mauritania. So in that way, Mauritania is very important for Europe. Mauritania is also very important for China because since 2018, Mauritania joined BRI. In last 1 year, Chinese president met Mauritanian president twice, once in Africa Arab Summit and also last June, this June itself, he invited him to Beijing. So it was very important for India to visit Mauritania, and probably I am really hoping that there will be some talk on IAFS, India-Africa Forum Summit as well. Finally, I'll come to Malawi. Malawi is a small country. It's unlike the other two countries, it's a landlocked country towards the southern part of Africa. But it is also as Ambassador mentioned, it has a significant Indian diaspora, and also it is very close to Mozambique. Mozambique is a country where India has significant investment. India has particularly, in almost every field, but in oil and gas, in agro industry, all these things India has invested. Now, in the northern part of Mozambique, this Cabo Delgado region, the region has been unstable for quite some time now, and India probably needed an alternative, probably a neighboring country where India can also rely upon if there is something happening there. So in that way, Malawi is also a significantly geopolitically important country for India. All these three, I think we have to consider our economic importance, all three countries, our historic connection. But I think there is a very strong geopolitical interest, strategic interest that has played a role in choosing these three countries.
Coming on to you, Mayusha, since you have been on ground and covering President's visit, I would like you to share the highlights of the President's visit to Algeria first.
Yes, Diksha, the Algerian visit was for 3 days. The Honorable President has had bilateral meeting with the President of Algeria, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, and other important leaders in Algeria. And along with that, there were a lot of delegation level talks also. And after the meeting, the president of both the countries had expressed their hope that their countries' ties, the ties that exist between both the countries, are going to further definitely strengthen and reaffirm. And they had reaffirmed their commitment towards greater harmony. And it was also been mentioned that further on consultations are going to come between the two countries in very near future itself. And they're going to enter into more very distinctive, clear MOUs, etc. on trade and investments, etc. are on the way. That's also said during the meetings. And in Algeria, it also seen that the president was given a very, very warm ceremonial welcome, and she had visited very important historical centers of Maqam Jaid and Mausoleum, and she was given the honorary doctorate from Sidi Abdullah University. And the kind of reception that the Honorable President of India has received in Algeria really shows the warm relation that both the countries are sharing. And also the Honorable President had interacted with the Indian diaspora, where she had urged them to be a very bridge between both the countries and really thank their contribution. So the Algerian visit, the Indian President's visit to Algeria, has definitely added a new chapter, and which has been confirmed from the Secretary MEA also, who is on delegation with the President for this particular visit.
Mayusha, continuing with you, 4 MOUs were signed with Mauritania. So could you just talk about what were the MOUs which were signed between both the countries?
Yes, Diksha. The MOUs, there were 4 important MOUs. One was on the diplomatic relation between both the countries, and they had agreed to have more foreign cooperation in matters of international peace and security. Another was on waiving off the visa requirement for the diplomatic and official passport holders, such that the diplomatic relation flows more smooth between India and Mauritania. And there was also a MOU on the cultural exchange between both the countries from 2024 to 28. That involves a lot of exchanges of their cultural things and people moving from one country to another, and the arts and festivals, etc. And the 4th MOU was on the foreign institute, the training institutes of the diplomats. Both the countries had agreed into a MOU in which there will be sharing of their knowledge and sharing of faculties, etc. Apart from it, there was also a private MOU which has been signed to the field of force feeds and mining. With regard to that, the Secretary MEA had said that this will definitely give a great impetus on more investment coming on that field, and Indian investors could also see that Mauritania is becoming a very important place for investment, especially on the field of mining, phosphates, automobiles and infrastructure, etc. So that was details of the MOUs between India and Mauritania.
Mayusha, I would like to ask you, what are the MOUs that were signed between India and Malawi? And also, could you share the highlights of the President's visit to the country?
In Malawi, the president had a 3 days visit, and it's been continuing now till tomorrow, which is there. And from initially, as she has reached Malawi itself, it was not only a warm ceremonial reception, but it was also a traditional reception. What we could find in Malawi, different from both the countries, was it was very much traditional. It was they were displaying all their affection right from every function that the president was going to. The president has attended a business conclave, and here more than 60 companies of India and Malawi had participated, and their conclave is still continuing. And addressing the business community, the president have urged them to continue to do the good work, and also assured them that the diplomatic relation and the present visit and the MOUs that is coming up, everything will be easing the way towards increasing the trade and investment between both the countries. And then there was an important community event in Malawi, which has seen a very large number of Indians. As already been mentioned by the ambassador here, that we have a very large Indian community in Malawi. And they had traveled long distance to visit, to meet the Indian president. And it was really heartwarming watching that. And it is the largest among all the community event in all the three nations. And the president had also visited the War Memorial today and the mausoleum, founding father of Malawi, Dr. Hastings Banda, Komasu Banda. And tomorrow also she is scheduled to visit the temple, Ramakrishna Temple and Lake Malawi, which is very important and the center of tourism of Malawi. So because Malawi is trying to project itself as one of the tourism centers, hotspots of Africa. So looking into the possibility of it, the president will be visiting Lake Malawi also tomorrow. With respect to when coming to the MOUs, there are 4 major MOUs were signed. That was in the field of sports, cooperation in the field of sports, in the field of youth matters, and in the case of arts and cultural exchange between the country, and also in pharmacopoeia, in the drugs and pharmaceutical field. And these MOUs are expected to improve the trade and also the relation between both the countries that is already being shared. And apart from it, India had also agreed to give 1,000 metric tons of rice to Malawi and a cancer treatment equipment. And it has also been said that the cancer treatment center in Malawi will be operational very soon. And further on, today in the briefing, the secretary has mentioned that the India is also considering the debt restructuring, as Malawi has taken a lot of loans from India and it is to be repaid stage now. The differing of it is also India has been considering for promoting a very cordial relation between both the countries.
Thank you so much, Mayusha, for all those updates. So, Ambassador Sharma, coming back to you, I would like to talk to you about the bilateral trade between India and Algeria. Was around $1.7 billion till last year. I would like you to explain what are the existing areas of cooperation between the two nations.
The 1.7 billion was a slightly low figure because this was due to the impact of COVID. But my understanding is that the trade has started looking up. And one report I saw, it said that it is crossed to 2 billion. Now, what constitutes the trade? You see, we import hydrocarbons from Algeria, and that had been our long-term interest, gas, oil. And then we also export their technology goods. We have had long relationship with them. Our companies are there. There are a lot of Indian companies who are headquartered in Algeria, and we export to them engineering goods. Then we've also a relationship of investment, which has taken root there. So we have some investment in Algeria. And phosphate is another area where in Algeria we have shown interest and where we have also tapped. Then we find that Algerians are very receptive to Indian forays in areas like space is one area where we've had cooperation now. And they appreciate India's strides into space. So, and they value the cooperation with India. Now, the important thing of Algeria is that apart from being politically a very important player in Africa and the Arab world, Algeria comprises a population which is very savvy because of close connection with Europeans, and they have harnessed their colonial connection also with France. They have interest in modern technology, in moving forward with what we call the fourth industrial revolution. So information technology, cyber, and new vistas in modern technology, where India has shown its mark. So we are cooperating with them in the new technologies also, their openings. So in that sense, there is a reinforcement of existing trade, which is substantial. And as I said, it is anchored on oil and gas and phosphates. And then our exports to them on technology goods. There are new potential which we need to be tapped. And this is what was mentioned by our president in our speech, that their relationship is close and multifarious, multidimensional, but it is far below the potential that we have. So we need to exploit the potential. So I would say that 1.7 billion is a low end of the figure. Our relationship is easily able to transcend 2 billion and maybe even 3 billion, because there is so much to do with Algeria. And they love Indians. I've done a posting in Algeria. I know the Algerians from close quarters, and they have warmth for us. And they always appreciate the kind of independence which India has shown in its decision making in these past 10 years. So they would like to develop this relationship more for mutual interest and closeness.
Right, Ambassador Sharma. Mr. Bhattacharya, I would now like to draw your focus to Mauritania, the second country which the Honorable President paid a visit to. Could you give our listeners an overview of the bilateral ties between the two nations, India and Mauritania?
In recent years, India did not have any bilateral visits to Mauritania. So there was a visit from Prime Minister, the President of Mauritania, who visited India during the third India-Africa Summit in 2015. That was the only high-level visit. If you see the bilateral trade and investment, there also, I think there is a lot of potential that India has not really explored. In fact, as I said earlier, this India-Africa Forum Summit, there was a conversation going on that it might be because India does not follow the FOCAC model. So there was India follows Banjul formula, which is to consult with the African Union and then organize the summit. So there was a conversation that probably we will host it in Mauritania. So in that way, probably there is a possibility that India and Mauritania now, after this visit, we will improve not only our bilateral relationship, but also we'll use this partnership to use Mauritania as a bridge to approach the other African countries, particularly in that region. And moreover, Mauritania, it was a part of Sahel Alliance. It is probably the only stable country at this moment in that Sahel region. So India needs a partnership. So it is more to, yes, there has been a lot of conversation going on. I mean, our Honorable President, she spoke about improving our relationship, our economic, because the trade has become with Mauritania, it has quite stagnant. So it really requires, India needs to really step up and improve our trading relation. But otherwise, it is also very important for India to changing geopolitical scenario to as it is. It was Mauritania was invited last year for NATO summit also as a non-NATO partner. It is a member of BRI now. It is the African Union head. So I think all these factors played a role, not just economic. That's what I would say.
Ambassador Sharma, India and Malawi, the third country. I would now like to bring your focus to Malawi. So, India and Malawi share cordial and friendly bilateral relations. India was one of the first countries to establish diplomatic relations with Malawi immediately after its independence in 1964. However, the people-to-people ties between the two countries span over 140 years. How do you see people-to-people ties between the two countries acting as a catalyst for a strong bilateral relationship?
Our investment there, about $500 million, makes us the fourth largest investor in Malawi, largest trading partner. And the bilateral trade between India and Malawi has been growing. The elements of trade which are there between our two countries are, in energy, food and agriculture. So in these areas, the work of the diaspora is useful because energy, minerals and food for its large population in India, we are tapping resources and link with the diaspora provides. It goes back to 19th century. So they are familiar with the terrain, with the land, with the people. And they also forge a certain relationship which connects with the deep emotional mutuality of interest, It is not a kind of a mercantile interest because African countries are very conscious of the mercantile interest, which has the tinge of colonialism. Now, India goes there not as a mercantile power, but as a friend, as a brother, as a member of the family. So that aspect of India's relationship with Africa very much manifests in Malawi also. There is an immense scope for enhancing cooperation in the fields of agriculture, mining, energy, tourism, etc. So I would say that there are Indian companies which are coming out with growing investments, and they are in sectors like small and medium enterprises, and as well as we are working through multinational companies. So this is a kind of a larger scope. Closeness with Mozambique was also important because we've been, as was mentioned by Mr. Bhattacharya, we had close work in Mozambique, and this Malawi-Mozambique bridge, it's an important link. So I think all told, relationship with Malawi is poised to grow, and our president's visit has given it a big impetus.
Mr.
Yeah.
Bhattacharya, lastly, I would like to ask your thoughts on India-Malawi bilateral ties, and what scope do you see? What are the areas, potential areas, where do you see the growth in trade ties between the two nations?
The ambassador has already highlighted the points, but overall, I think India and Malawi, we have some shared interests. So one is if there is an Indian investment in Mozambique, which in the northern Mozambique, there is the problem of insurgency. So if there is an insurgency problem in Mozambique, that will impact Indian investment and also Malawi as a neighboring country. So we have this to fight terrorism. Then Malawi is a country, it is suffering, it is a quite drought prone country, and it has been suffering from the negative externalities of climate change. India has similar problem in many parts. So India has this shared goal of protecting environment, combating climate change. Then also you see the way the cyber crime and everything is going on. So India has this cyber, partnership on cyberspace to protect people from the cyber crime. And also, India is a benign player in when it comes to disaster relief. So a few years ago, when the cyclone Idai hit in that coast, Malawi was, Malawi does not have the sea coast, but it was also impacted from that cyclone. And India gave lot of disaster relief. So in that way, I think with Malawi, I really think it is more of humanitarian relation. It is not really our very transactional, where we are just counting on, what we should get from Malawi. But overall, the trade can be improved on say, green energy, healthcare, food security, and also, this sustainability, counter-terrorism, as I said, these are the areas where India and Malawi can improve its relation. And just one more point on both Algeria and Mauritania. I think one important point that I should also mention is the energy part. So since the Russia-Ukraine war, these European countries are suffering from energy crisis, and India has launched this International Solar Alliance. Both these countries are partner of it. And also, both these countries, they are basically desert prone. Most of the countries are desert land, empty land. So there is a lot of space for India to, to explore this solar and be it solar energy. India is actually exploring green hydrogen projects also with some of these countries, including Algeria and Mauritania. So I think green energy is going to be one of the key features going forward with all three countries.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sheelkant Sharma and Mr. Sameer Bhattacharya, for sparing your valuable time.
You were listening to a discussion on President's visit to Algeria, Mauritania and Malawi. The participants were Sheelkant Sharma, former ambassador, Sameer Bhattacharya, political scientist, and Mayusha, Akashvani correspondent. Moderator was Diksha Saxena, Akashvani correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.